Here's a handy tip for freedom fighters. The majority doesn't win, the culture wins. Look at this. Here's a picture of the presidential election map for 1972, the election between incumbent President Richard Nixon and George McGovern. Nixon won in a tremendous landslide. He took every state except Massachusetts, and McGovern also won the District of Columbia. Nixon also took more than 60% of the popular votes, nearly 61%, a whopping 18 million more votes than the challenger. Now here's a picture of some hippies the same year. There weren't really very many of these guys. Their program of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, dropping out and getting high, and some garbage about the age of Aquarius was a childish and irresponsible nonsense, almost a perfect prescription for a useless and unhappy individual life and for forcing a heretofore vibrant country into decline. As I say, there weren't a lot of them, but ask yourself this: who won over time? The majority that elected Nixon, or the tiny minority that believed in promiscuous sex, legalized marijuana, socialism, foul language, and disrespect for our traditions and founding principles? Even we, the conservatives I'm talking to and the conservative who's talking, are in some ways more children of the hippies than of the people who voted for Richard Nixon. Polls mean nothing. Majorities mean nothing. Facts and logic, morality mean very little. Culture means everything. Culture is that mysterious intellectual atmosphere we don't even know we're breathing. Today, the philosophical descendants of the 60s radicals are selling a psychopathic culture of death and pseudo-virtuous dishonesty. And if you think the polls and the majority and the facts are on our side, just remember, majorities don't win. Culture wins. Let's look at this week. I mean, the way that the Overton window has changed in terms of abortion and what you're allowed to say. I don't want to beat a dead child, as it were. But yesterday we're talking about the abortion bill that lost. It lost in the Virginia House of Delegates. But this was a bill, an infanticidal bill, a psychopathic infanticidal bill. That's what it was. And we showed that delegate, Kathy Tran, I believe her name was, she was being questioned about it and how late you could do it. And basically you could abort a child on the grounds of mental health, right? What does that mean? That kind of depresses me to have a baby, you know, like you could abort it in the moments of birth. The governor then went on radio to explain himself, because he's a Democrat governor, Ralph Northam, and he was asked about that, and he just dug the hole even deeper, essentially supporting infanticide. Here he is.
We talk about third trimester abortions. These are done with the consent of, obviously, the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
Bret Baier on Fox did a whole segment on it with his panel and covered it in the news. But they were on the panel, I think it was Mark Thiessen, you know, really smart guy, very bright and very passionate about this. But he's citing the fact that this is unpopular. He was citing a Marist Knights of Columbus poll, which showed that only 15% of America support abortions at any time during pregnancy. 74% of respondents wanted some kind of restriction on abortion, such as first trimester, rape, incest, and so on. Very few people support third trimester, and probably if you were talking about what he was talking about, that was infanticide. He said the baby could be born, and if they decided... Lord, I'm only laughing because it's so nuts. If you don't laugh, you cry. I mean, he's basically saying you can leave it there to die. What I'm telling you is it doesn't matter what the polls say. It doesn't matter what the polls say. He has moved the Overton window to where a governor of a state can talk about murder, legalized murder, and people just say, fine. And, you know, I know so many liberals, and they all say the same thing. Whenever I talk about the radicalism in the Democrat Party, the liberals all say, well, most of my friends don't agree with that. Most of my friends don't. It doesn't matter. It's not how many people. It's where they are and what they do and how they change the culture and whether you speak up. Because if you're sitting there going, well, I don't agree with that, but I'm voting for him. I'm voting for him because, you know, that's radical. See, he won't get away with that. Then you just made that acceptable. If you vote for a guy like that, in fact, if you vote for his party, as far as I'm concerned, you have made that statement acceptable. It is all right if all the doctors agree and the mother agrees, and men don't get a say, because what have they got to do with humanity? it's all right to leave that baby to die. If you vote for that, that's acceptable talk to you, if you're not outraged, you're part of the movement of the culture in that direction. It does not matter whether you agree or disagree. It doesn't matter what the polls say. It matters that you allow that atmosphere, like poison, like miasma, to seep into the culture.